start the conversation is by fanboying a little bit on your time in Los Angeles.
Okay.
We actually shared a maitre d' for a little while. Francis was his
Really?
name.
Oh,
Yes.
amazing. Yeah.
And Francis was, I mean, a unicorn of a human being.
Yeah.
But when Francis started working at the Arbor, he was like, you need to come in. Their food's better than yours. To which I was like, shit, okay, let's check this out. And it was. I'm not going to say it was better to disrespect my own chef, but I will say it was incredible. Absolutely incredible. And then, and then we were all faced with the pandemic. You walked away from that experience having built something that is as close to perfect as a restaurant can be. What did you walk away from that experience having internalized?
First, thank you so much. I mean, that it was definitely a very special restaurant.
It was.
It took an entire team to build, obviously a long time, probably 2.5 years to get the construction down. For me, it was really about like the food, but also the way in which guests could interact with the menu, could have their own way to kind of choose their evening. And then obviously design played a huge part in it as well. Like what was the materiality? What were the plates like? What was, the entire thing for me was super important. I think what I walked away with were a lot of like really great lessons. Obviously, a lot of I don't know, a lot of my first concern, I guess, to give a little bit of context, when COVID hit, because we were all like everything was up in the air for everyone in the industry.
Sure.
I mean, everyone in the world, right? So first was like, how do we pivot? How do we survive? Nobody knew what the future was going to hold. And then I think once we made the decision to close, it was really about like, okay, acceptance that this project was coming to an end. All this work was really was going to end. Like there was no more work. I think the next thing was really like, what are we doing with the team? Like, what is our community? What is our team gonna become? How do we like go from like being so tight knit to what are next steps for them? And that was a huge source of unknown, a source of stress, a source of like discontent. Obviously, like that was the feeling. The bigger thing than closing the restaurant was felt like we were letting people down, and I think that was like the biggest thing. So for me, just leaving lessons learned were like, first, I felt like I had an attitude of like, what's coming next? How do I not make this the hallmark of my career? How do we like get beyond this and do something that was unique, that was special? How do we continue to create? How do we continue to build teams? How do we continue to like create restaurants and be profitable and impact communities and do it in a way that felt like truthful to like my goals, what kind of I wanted to do, and surround myself by like-minded people. So, I mean, there's always, every day is there, we're taking lessons out. These were bigger lessons in like not letting one failure define a career. I mean, that was like super, super.
Well, and then, you made the move to Carlsbad, which so did I, interestingly enough. But North County, San Diego doesn't seem like a logical jump from Los Angeles. Most LA chefs, pandemic aside, they want to stay in LA, right? They'll settle for New York, but like the weather's better in LA. And so there's this rat race that is created as a result. And so, moving into what is a secondary or tertiary market where, to be candid with you, there was nothing like your food in Carlsbad prior to you moving.
Well, I would push back on that. I mean, part of me coming here were conversation with John Resnick, who's my business partner, and obviously
Sure.
we're creating these restaurants together. But Campfire existed. I mean, that was John who opened that.
It did. Absolutely.
Jean
it
and
did.
Jolie existed. It was like very, very young going into the pandemic. But there was a massive transition point, and again, unknowns there, but like a desire to come out of the other side of this thing with its own kind of vision and interest. So, I mean, I think the bones were here. Like the movement had already started. I've obviously seen it grow a ton in the 5 years I've been here, which
same.
is like flown by. But it's still like the movement was already in process.
But it was early stage.
It was definitely early stage. I mean, I lived here 20 years ago. Yeah.
Look, Eric, there is no guarantee that concept would have worked here outside of the fact that it already existed and you stepped into it. How did you weigh out the risk reward in going into what is an existing location? Because like a rebrand's harder than a brand, is it not?
Well, yeah, but this wasn't a rebrand. Honestly, it was a continuation of a story. And it was really important for me to, when coming in first, I mean, all of this is built off of like months of discussion, honestly,
Sure.
with my partner, and like what were our future plans. Coming down here for me was not about like just one step. It was like a piece to the puzzle, the community, the impact, the opportunity, the team, the infrastructure, also like the ability and the desire to continue to grow and push and evolve. That continual restlessness was super important for me. So the first decision was about people, I think, and who I was surrounding myself with. Second, I lived here 20 years ago. My wife, on the first time we moved back from France, we had taken 2 months, drove across the country, stopped in San Diego, and fell in love with it.
Sure.
And we're here for 2 years. And so we were even in LA. Every time I got a day off, I would drive down. I was in Encinitas. We go to the beach. We'd like hang out, and it was very much a comfort zone for me. I love Chino Farms. I love like there's so many great things around here
Sure.
that I had known already, and it continued to grow, and I could see that. And so it was like it just felt like a really good time to like jump in.
And so what was your approach to growth?
Sorry. So approach to growth. I think the biggest key first was just maintaining the restaurant, the strengths of the team,
Right.
integrating myself, right? Because like the team is really the key to all this. I wanted to come in and just develop that working relationship. We were doing menus that changed every 2 weeks. It was a 5 course menu, 80 guests outside, and that whole scenario. One of the biggest moments probably for us was just having discussions of like, what do we want Jeune to be when we come out of the pandemic? So when we know we're coming back indoors, and it was sort of an 11th hour decision to be like, we really see that people are gravitating towards this 4 course tasting menu format. We see that people are out celebrating and wanted a place that they could, it could be a once a week place. It could be a celebration, as well as a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And so making the decision of like, okay, let's continue this tasting menu format. Let's give flexibility. There's a lot of similarities in what we were doing at Auburn and then how we wanted to continue this menu here. And then we're just like, well, we don't know how long this will run, but when it runs its course, then we'll do a la carte again, and then we'll like figure it out. But for the most part, that format helped us during COVID to be like efficient with food costs, to understand projections of like the revenue coming in. We could then scale our labor around it. We knew kind of how to operate in that. And it was actually a very kind of high performing time for the restaurant, meaning it was like, okay, not like the most sales ever, but it was efficient. And it was like we could talk to people and people could see the team and we could train and we could do what we were doing really, really well. And so we've been able to like grow and grow and grow like one step at a time, continuing that format. And again, we're 5 years into it at this point. It's still super busy. I mean, I don't know any other restaurant, honestly, that does a tasting menu that has the volume that this restaurant
Oh, I
can do.
agree with you wholeheartedly.
It's crazy. I'm like, and coming in was part of it was like, okay, the menu engineering, also like maintaining the perspective. So it's like a French restaurant, but really through the lens of our Southern California landscape. That's really my like what I love. I spent many years in France. I worked for a French chef for a long time. I love California. I love produce and spontaneity and all this stuff. So it was like this to me was an ideal platform to kind of continue to drive the ship. And the team was like really hungry, which was super important. And so yeah, I don't know. It was we'll do like 130 guests a night, pretty much every night. And it's like, that's a lot of people and a lot of tasty menus. And so in order to do this, we were like, I had to move around. Garde took a new shape. We got rid of a table and built in refrigeration. And so we had to like move things to accommodate it. But I feel like step by step, we made good decisions as a team, and it's been doing well. So,
I was very lucky in that like I got started as an entrepreneur in my early to mid 20s, and had like a massive failure out the gate. And what you realize from a massive failure is like, okay, I didn't die, right? That it's, I can just iterate and like adjust and all of this. And at the end of a business is rarely the end of one's life. And so coming out of the pandemic, and I'm sure it felt very similar to you, it was a very surreal time. Nothing felt real. And it's so easy to look at what you built and the trends that you helped to push forward in this community, and to say that you were a visionary. But I would assume you also couldn't be tied to outcome, because you look at June and Jolie just as an example. Like there were no indications that it would do well. right? Like this predates every other tasting menu in the town. How did you approach that? And how did you approach, because there's a lot of structure that goes into it. And so there are a lot of people listening that I'm sure have ideas. How
Yeah.
do you experiment in a way to find out where that perfect product market fit is without burning out?
Yeah, I think my approach has always been, instead of trying to figure out what we can do with what we have, which is valid for sure, but it's also like, what are we trying to accomplish? And then how do we build things to accomplish it? Meaning, like, we couldn't do the food we wanted to do at the volume we wanted to do, given the way the kitchen was set up. And it's a beautiful kitchen. It's a Heston Island. There's tons of room. The guests are sitting right there, but it still needed more room to plate dishes. It still needed more room for storage and all these things. And so it's like the two go hand in hand. We were pushing every day with the food and covers, and we were also pushing the equipment and the format and our training, how the sous chefs operate and how we're dealing with menu planning. Like, all those things are always done with the goal of like, what are we trying to achieve? What's the why behind it? And then how do we like activate ourselves to accomplish that? And I mean, it starts with, I think, the tools at our disposition, meaning like we need the equipment to do it, and we need the product to do it. So at the same time, we're like thinking about the kitchen. And when I say this, I'm also thinking about the exterior patio, which didn't exist before. So we like grew 60 more seats outside and grew, 60% capacity to the restaurant. But because like the outdoors was so important to the experience, it's such an opportunity for us to also carve out this thing that didn't really exist in Southern California as much as it does today, meaning like outdoor dining was much less prevalent than it is now. And I think that's one of like the great things where we've gone like overall in the industry here in Southern California is like having more outdoor space, is super important, and being more tied into nature and just like taking advantage of where we're at. And then like the product, making sure I was at the farms talking again, reconnecting with Chino, with Tom and Makoto and the whole family. And then going to meet with Aaron at Girl and Doug, and then talking to Spencer at Sage Hill, and then trying to find local fishermen. And we have like also using like bigger supply chains that we need because we have volume and we need consistency. So it was like doing all the things at once. And I think it was just always being curious, always asking questions. And it's ultimately just like the continuous drive to do it. It's like you set your mind to do something. And so I try and set goals really high, and then you just keep pushing until we can get there.
You talk
It's
like a
attitude,
business.
essentially. Yeah.
It is. And like you talk like a CEO, right? And you function like a businessman, but you were trained as a chef.
But I also studied business before being a chef. And I also grew up around restaurants. So like my grandparents, when I was growing up, had 7 restaurants at one time in North Carolina, and they were kind of all over. And one was a steakhouse, and one was like a seafood restaurant at the coast. And like each one had its own identity, which there's a lot of trends in the way I kind of isolate things like that. Like Lilo is very different than Jean, even though they're tasting menus, they're two very separate places. Campfire has its own wood-fired identity and like boisterousness, and then Wildland is like this all-day bakery. Like each one has its own thing. That doesn't make anyone better than the other. It's like, again, for me, mentally flexing different muscles, having different creative outputs. How do we cook Mediterranean pasta next to like wood-fired, vegetables from our neighborhood? So for me, growing up around restaurants, like geared my head to be able to, I think, handle the energy around it, handle stress, handle like lots of different things at once. It doesn't mean I do it super well, but I feel like I can, or I learn to be able to prioritize and adjust. And my role essentially becomes like leader and support at the same time. And it's like balancing those two things.
And so you've got these 2 restaurants and they're doing really well. And you're patient with it. So what I think, hopefully some of the fortunate people listening realize is once you've reached a modicum of success, especially success at your level, the phone starts ringing. Right, we're opening this new strip mall in La Jolla, and we would love for you to be the anchor tenant. This is an amazing opportunity for you. And so the phone starts ringing, and
Sure.
you don't take anyone up on it for years. And then ultimately you decide to grow. When did you know you were making the right decision to move from 2 to 3?
From restaurants, and then, well, it was 2 to 4, and honestly it was super fast. So the backstory is more like I moved here in September took over Jean. That was our move from LA. In October, John and I walked the space, which was to become Wildland and Lilo. So there's not a whole lot of opportunities, or wasn't a whole lot of buildings in the area we wanted to be. Part of me coming here was like working with John, working with the teams, working with the restaurants, kind of like dating before you get married. Let's make sure everything is like very cohesive and,
Sure.
and then, like, let's build some cool stuff together. And we quickly realized that like we thought we could do some really fun stuff and some really cool things and impactful things together by like joining forces. And so Wildland again was a month after we were walked that space, and it wasn't exclusively that space. We had talked about some other stuff and seen some other stuff, but there was something about this one, same street, 10,000 square foot blank slate, that we could do almost whatever. And we quickly landed on kind of the all day concept, because we knew just being here that like during the daytime, there was only a very few places that we liked to go and could eat well and felt good. And we knew that there was a place we could build that we thought the community would come to and enjoy.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about like the anatomy of a banger, because I would argue that musicians that write songs for people that are not themselves, chefs that create menus for people that are not themselves, and restaurateurs that build restaurants for people that are not them have a tendency to fail pretty fast. Either you're an arbiter of taste and you're a successful restaurateur as a result, or you're not, right?
Well, I think you want to go in and you want to build something where you want to be. And then you hope that everyone is going to appreciate it and be like, and like have similar tastes. So if you went in and built something where like just to do it because you thought people wanted that demand, it's kind of hard. You're trying to find like, what's the opening in the market? What doesn't exist? And then like, what am I excited about? And then like, how do we make this work? Because if it doesn't exist, there's an opportunity to create something unique. If you do that in a void and it's something you don't like just because you think you can make money doing it, I feel like it just loses its truth. It becomes easy to not push yourself and not evolve and not actually maybe go to the extent you need to go. So early on, I mean, within that quick time period, it took us 3.5, almost 4 years to get the restaurant open, but it was very intentional time and it was time well spent. So when we were trying to think, what do we want? It's like, again, where do we want to be? And to your point about getting offers to do other projects, I feel like those things come when you're able to have some places that are sought after. Then like there are opportunities because those things happen, but it's really about like choosing the ones where you feel like, again, your time is well spent. It's meant to be like something that can continue your personal growth, your community growth, and all those things together. And obviously make fun money and be successful. And hopefully that then becomes like even more of the engine to keep everything going.
But don't you think like the last part is the first part? Right?
Well, they gotta go hand in hand.
They should, but statistically, I would argue that's most certainly not the case.
Because, but most people, I mean, I feel like it takes a team. I don't feel like there's anyone who masters all domains. I do have a business background and a culinary background, so it gives me a little bit of like, I can step back. I geek out on numbers. I'm looking at our P&L all the time. I'm looking at like food costs and labor costs, and our teams learn that as well too. Like we're fully transparent with our managers, and like they are the ones who are putting in this data that then we analyze together, and then we're having daily conversations about how do we get better. Because again, we could like do all this behind closed door, but it doesn't make sense. They're not going to grow. They're not going to make good decisions, and they're not going to have the experience to actually do better at it as well. Our biggest thing was like when we went from 2 restaurants to 4 was like, how do we have the culture from those 2 restaurants, which is really one of our kind of superpowers, is like incredible company culture. The people here are like huge hearts, super genuine. We want them to like be incredibly informed, but also be themselves and explain things and curate experiences and have fun with guests and, create conversation. How do we do that at 2 places? And then like we went from 120 team members to like 240, 250. Basically within like a 2-month span, like this massive hiring push. And those are some of like the major obstacles that we spend hours and hours trying to organize ourselves around so that we're the most successful at it.
When we went to Wildland, we had an amazing dinner experience. And then we were invited. They're like, you should check us out for breakfast too. And so we didn't have my daughter, so we went for breakfast as well. And here's what I saw. I saw a lot of people, Eric, And in the state of California, a lot of people equals a lot of money. And I kept saying it over and over again. I said it during dinner service. And I said it again at breakfast. It's like, man, there are a lot of people that work here. My fine dining restaurant was 2 stories and 6,000 square feet.
Wow, huge.
And from a 900 square foot bar in Hollywood, which I did a very good job with, to my first entree into fine dining, and
Sure.
it's across 2 stories and 6,000 square feet. The post-pandemic trend, right? Smaller footprints, smaller operations, fewer day parts. And then there's Wildland, right? Which is this all day into the evening concept, massive hours of operation, massive footprint, massive employment base. And so if you did it based on the deep research that we did, I knew that you knew that it could make money out the gate. And so if that's the case, what is your magic math, Eric? That makes
no
it
magic
so
math.
Right, that you can employ all of these humans and still make money. What do you think you figured out? What is the formula for you?
Well, I mean, honestly, it probably boils down to just build it and they will come, and the belief system that works. And that doesn't mean go in blindly and do it. Obviously, we have pro formas. We build models based on what we think check average will be meal period wise. So what is our daily building labor models? I mean, we kind of we're very transparent with the P&Ls amongst the management team. And so therefore it's just normal that we look at bottom line numbers, look at percentages of smallwares, of kitchen supplies, of rent, of all of these things, and each one critically deep diving into. And so we're able to use the existing restaurants and build very, very specific pro formas. And then we have to make obviously educated guesses of what we think revenue will be. And again, this concept doesn't exist here. But we've seen really amazing restaurants in other communities do well. I mean, I spent a year at Republic in LA with Walter and Marge and the entire team. And that place is insane. And it is so busy.
It's crushed for so long. Every day.
And everyone loves it. But there's a line out the door all the time. And what they do at the farmer's market, buying amazing product, cooking solid food, it's delicious. And they're very present, and beautiful bakery. And so everything is really good. If you do something well, and I think you can stand out, then people will come and they will come back. And so the biggest thing for us is the business model is now just make sure that everyone who comes in has an exceptional time, that the food is delicious, that the service is really in tune with the needs, that we're bussing tables as fast as we can, that the food is out as quickly as we can. And so we try and we have KDS systems in Wildland, which we don't have, kitchen displays, right? To try and make stuff more efficient. And it's a very big footprint. We also have a lot of equipment, which helps support the trying to make the teams work as effective as possible in the smallest footprint, stay on the line, do the things that need to be done, and be able, so it's manageable. It's not this you're not going into service every day feeling you're against this massive wave. Doesn't mean it's easy, because every day is challenging for sure, but we want the team to have the tools. And it's also the bakery was very important. So the bakery was taking care of the bread at Jean. We can get Campfire in. We have another platform now that can make the current restaurant stronger. And so that was another key element to this. I mean, we're still working through it too. We're 8 months in at this point, and I feel we're not where we want to be. And if we were, that we just retire. I don't know. I mean, I don't feel we're never right where we want to be, but we're getting a good score. But I know we can do better, and we're we still super nitpicky every day on how do we make it better. So,
do you focus on marketing?
We don't focus enough, I think, on marketing. It's one of our next potentials. So far, fortunately, we have this baked in clientele.
Sure.
We're in Carlsbad. We have 2 existing restaurants that have a really, really good, great following and lots of goodwill from the community. And so that helps also stabilize the restaurant. So meaning if we came out of nowhere with no reputation and no existing clientele, Wildland would have been very, very hard. Our first day we opened, we did over 1,000 covers. It was nuts. And
I can imagine.
Way for us to do that.
That doesn't even sound fun.
No, it was super exciting. No, it was crazy fun. It was definitely mayhem and intense, but it was definitely fun. But without like, I mean, we did a couple posts on Instagram. We obviously have been talking about it at our restaurants for a long time, but it wasn't like, okay, these massive advertorials or marketing campaigns. And so that did help give us a good foundation to work off of. But I do think we're still very like conscious of like trying to be storytellers. So our Instagram is very kind of storytelling to each restaurant. The actual marketing component, I think, is something where we're going to be fine tuning and still working on now. How do we keep the business? Because obviously, as the community continues to grow, there's more and more restaurants. We want to make sure that we're still like front and center of mind when people are going to go.
I was just having this conversation, and I think that like there are three big hurdles for every restaurant, three questions they need to answer, which is like, does this thing need to exist in this world? Is it for me? The example I would give you is like there are no shortage of vegan and vegetarian restaurants out there that are amazing and should exist, but they're not for me. And then the the third is occasion, right? How do you fit
Yeah.
into people's lives? One of the things I was struck by on a Friday night at Wildland was the number of like little baby cakes that went
Yeah.
out, right? A lot of
Yes.
birthdays, a lot
Lots
of
of
vacations,
celebrations. Yeah.
lots of celebrations. And I think that you build that into the culture. There's an element of revelry that has to happen in a Tuesday night dinner that lets people know this is the right place for you to host your birthday.
Well, you celebrate the celebrations like by doing those small gestures, those little mini cakes. Um, it I don't it validates people's like desire to come out. It shows them that we care about them, that we like value their time, and that we really want them here. Um, yeah, it's one of the cool things about the restaurants. I feel like in each restaurant has its own way, whether it's a toast and a glass of something, or we do a lot of handwritten cards as well for guests because it's important the team can sign it, or it's very individualized if someone a wedding anniversary or it is a birthday, and I think the gesture and the fact that we take the time, the team as a whole takes the time to value these moments and can understand the impact is super important. And so we saw that quickly, and it's something that we've kind of like at each restaurant we tweak a little bit and make sure we take those moments with us.
Let's talk about the team and culture and leadership and all of these things. Yeah, I patronized enough of your places enough times that I can tell you that the team is very engaged, and they tend to lead with curiosity.
Yeah,
So it in the way that it doesn't feel like a script. It feels like a genuine conversation.
right.
Like you'll say,
I
"Have you been in before?" And you'll say, "Yes." And they'll say, "What did you enjoy the last time you were here?" And
yeah.
like you're caught off guard, right? Because that's not a line that they were trained to say. Like that's genuine curiosity.
I know, but
They're
how is that connecting? If you say yes and I go, okay, well, welcome back, and like let's talk about the menu tonight. Like the point is to make a connection. You know what I mean?
sure.
I mean, we intentionally talk about don't ask dead end questions. Like don't ask yes or no questions. Like try and formulate something where you can get something back, and then you can then like engage and hopefully this like I think people just they love that. That is really one of the things that our team does super super well. You mentioned curiosity. I mean, part of this and these foundations existed before I got here. I mentioned my partner John when he opened Campfire. They had these like five ideals and what the things are. And curiosity is one of those foundations. It's super important. We talk about it a lot. So
Let's talk about John. So I would argue that there's probably some overlap, but you two seem to have very complementary skill sets. And you've had other partners in the past. So I would ask you, what's the magic in this relationship?
I think like a figure it out attitude at all times, and like I think we're constantly communicating. We're literally at the restaurants all the time together. Every day we have a like we try not to have too many meetings and definitely not meetings for meetings sakes, but presence is super important. And so each day there's a meeting with the restaurant and those teams and those managers and GMs and chefs and sous chefs. And so like we have a lot I guess complementary skill sets where I'm much more in kind of the concrete manipulation, that kind of world, like how are we doing things, how are we cooking, what is the equipment, all those things. And he's much more into like culture building and also finding solutions and like training great managers and then also the recruitment. I feel like that helps us be much more effective in what we're doing. Obviously,
What
because we're
does?
like, well,
You
just
talking about the
being in
recruitment?
tune. Well, just being in tune with each other. Like I know what he is looking for, and I feel like he understands kind of what my perspective is. We also don't agree 100% on everything, and we like, we'll explain sometimes, like if we did, then we wouldn't really like, we probably wouldn't be pushing each other, enough. So it's good to also play devil's advocate. It's good to have another opinion. My experience is much different than his experience, and I do think there's great overlap. Recruitment definitely is one of the things. I mean, we spend a lot of time finding good people, interviewing, making sure they're good fits for the team, and then there's a long training process before like those team members hit the floor in front of guests. And so recruitment's like the first step, finding people who are bought in, who exude kind of this like triple GCO. It's funny because it is kind of all equates to like grace, grit, growth, community, and optimism. And those are like the 5 kind of foundations. And then outside of that, when we're recruiting, we have some other things we look for. Curiosity is absolutely one of them, but joy as well, altruism and stage presence. Those things are super, super important. So,
And then how rigidly do you adhere to it? I mean, if you're always hiring, always developing talent, that's different, which is how I think we all aspire to be. But there's a limited talent pool. There's especially a limited talent pool in North County, especially when you need hundreds and hundreds of people. Um,
yeah, but the beauty of like the rising tide lifts all boats is that there are more people moving here. The
sure,
better restaurants that exist, the more people, the more skill sets are built. I think
sure.
if we're looking for people who are curious, first they're open minded, they can like take what they've learned so far, bring the positive from that, and then be open to our feedback. Like feedback, clarity in communications, clarity in expectations, like all of those things are important because we can then have a team who is open to listen to the feedback. I mean, it doesn't really matter the skill set in the base, right? That we can teach the skills that we need. It's just a matter of finding the good people and then putting them in the good places. It is not easy. I think as long as that the new individuals are making the team stronger, like we're trying to, if you have like, we're trying to hire people who do not, I'd say the glass is half full, is like they make the team stronger, right? They have the potential to be one of the strongest team members in the next 6 months or the next 4 months or when they're rolling. And then it's a matter of like everyone, it feels like, or it seems that we appreciate that everyone is very motivated right when they start. It's also then how do you keep like from plateauing too early and making sure we're continuing to drive and continuing to improve. And whether that's like a back waiter becoming a server, or it's a commis becoming a demi chef de partie or chef de partie, or someone in fish moving to meat. It's like each person's on their own track, but it's like maximizing that track and making sure that they're engaged and pushed and still learning. So ultimately it's up to them to be curious in the beginning. And it's 50-50 learning. Like we're going to give at least half of what they need to know to be successful, but in return we need them to like read cookbooks to know what's going on in industry, who are our peer sets, like really be motivated about it. If we're talking about wine, maybe they're reading on their own about winemaking or have those things inherent. Like they've got to bring that to the table as well. And then we can like together get there.
And, for everybody listening that goes, that's an unrealistic expectation, right? I'm over here panhandling to get a dishwasher. Doesn't it start with you? Doesn't it come from like setting those internal expectations that this is
Sure.
what people are going to engage
Yeah,
and
of
then
course.
just adhering to those expectations?
That's it. That's it. It's a slippery slope if you just start letting anyone onto your team, and it's not a great example for your current team. Also, if they see you're hiring people who are maybe not as involved as them, then it could easily just build distrust and like disengagement, and that's absolutely what we don't want to do. So yeah, it's not easy. I'm not saying like that is definitely not without like, well, whatever. There's obviously arguments to say like it's not achievable, but I think when you set your goal to it, then you get as close to achieving that as possible.
You seem like a man with a lot of intention that works with a lot of intention. I would argue that I would have gotten to where I ultimately ended up much faster had I spent more time on the front end, let's say 25 years ago. thinking about how much money I wanted to make, how many hours a week I wanted to work, and what I wanted to spend that time doing.
Right.
All I ever wanted in the world was to own a bar until I owned a bar. And then I was like, fine dining seems cool. I wonder how hard that is. Turns out it's nearly impossible, and it almost killed me. And then into fast casual. And I didn't do these things because I'm a genius visionary. I did it because I was a bump on a log and I had a couple of decent ideas and, was unwilling to give up until they succeeded. Yeah. But there was certainly a path there of less resistance. And so sure. one of the gifts of the pandemic for I think so many of us was I got to pause. And it wasn't really about me and my ambition and my desires and all of that. It was a full reset for me. Right. Where it was like, what am I doing that I could give up tomorrow and not regret? What should I be doing with my time? What takes my energy? What gives me energy? Were you a different chef and restaurateur when you came to Carlsbad as a result of the pandemic? Did you have different intentions?
I think, yeah. Well, I think for me personally, I spent a long time trying to surround myself with the best people I could. I mean, I went to university and then went to culinary school and then went to work for French chefs and then left from there and went to France and spent years and then came back and then went to Asia. And so I spent 8 years with Guy Savoy, and it was really more, it was like I wanted to be immersed in this entire culture, push myself as much as I could, learn from the best people I could, take the good, leave the bad, just have the experience until I was like, felt fully confident. It was like, this is like, I feel like I have something to say. I feel like the vision is clear. Now let's go build it. Versus being like in my younger days, I didn't have the clarity to be like, this is what I think I should be doing, and then go build it. It was like, I'm going to figure out, like, build the biggest skill set I can and just like then be ready for what comes, because I think that is the way to then continue to grow. It's like, we're not waiting until we're ready to do something per se. I feel like we're waiting until, if we're confident that we can put ourselves in an uncomfortable position and make good decisions, figure it out, make it through, evolve, and be successful doing that. That is more important than like the other things. Insofar as like believing that the experiences up to this date will make us successful, I think that's important. I don't know. It's kind of a weird way to put it.
Did you feel that?
What?
I said we just fell in love. Did you feel that?
No.
No, dude, that's amazing. I mean, I think that personal development, professional development, it can feel self-aggrandizing. It can feel selfish. I think that people are way more likely, especially in our industry, they're way more likely to invest $5,000 in optimizing a walk-in cooler than they are on some sort of professional development class.
Sure. But I mean, I was like, yeah. Yes, but I feel like you're more flexible when you're younger too. Like, it's hard if you've already built this career to then take a step back. It's hard first to do it for yourself. It's hard to get people to open doors for you. But when you're a young cook and you show up, and I was cold calling 3-star chefs in France before I knew how to speak French that much. I had to write everything down and rehearse it, and then like have counter arguments when they said no. Like, going through that process, if I had to do that today, I wouldn't be able to do it the same. That was the time I needed to take advantage of that in order to make sure the rest was okay. And again, I knew at some point I wanted a few different restaurants. I want to be somewhere where I'm still very much in touch with the experience, with the cooking, with the farms, with like the creation point of it. And also like do it on a scale where I felt that it was rewarding of my time. Meaning I never thought like one small place would be the ideal. I wanted like a whole ecosystem, and it continues today. Like, okay, we have 4 restaurants. There's no like future things right now. I mean, right now we're concentrating on honing in, being as effective as possible, making sure the teams are set up. But I still am like trying to figure out, how can we have a farm? Where can like we dig deeper? How do we make this ecosystem more like whole? And then how do we just like make sure the process is there so that it can become more rewarding? And for me, it's like going and driving to the farm and spending some time and talking and then picking things and going to create is as much of like cleansing and resetting. Like I don't feel the stress in that. I feel like to me that's like the pleasure. Like my mornings are amazing, and I don't do it that much anymore. Where I could just go make these things, but sometimes we just need something, and it's like, okay, a product is not here. Let's figure it out. And those are like still the spontaneity, the creativity. Those things are like they're part of why it's so amazing to like be a chef, to cook, to have restaurants, to have teams, to do it. So.
How have you evolved as a leader? 2 to 4 is a big jump.
2 to 4 is a big jump. I think for me, and I think it's trying to work with the smallest team possible to have the most impact in a way that like can then filter down to the entire organization. Meaning like most of my time is spent with each of the 4 chef de cuisines, our head baker, and the 2 pastry chefs. And so like because it's a matter of like, okay, what are we doing next on the menu? How are we like, do we have any feedback we need to deal with? Are there challenges that we're trying to work through? Are there needs that the team has? Are we talking philosophy? Are we talking actual equipment? Are we talking inspiration? Is it just like people are calling out over and over? So how are we dealing with all those things? If I can be like a support and generate ideas and help to like steer the ship to those like 10 to 12 people, then that's obviously going to pay dividends to the entire team. And then, for example, most of my time right now is in Lilo at service, and I'm still there in service, and I'm dressing plates and tipping out fish like I was doing last night, and like trying to be there and tasting sauces and making sure it's like, yes, this is perfect, or maybe a little more salt, or like, you know, 1 more minute in the pan, let it rest, you know, don't push, slow down and breathe for a minute. Like those things are incredibly important. So, I'm still working into all that. It's not like I'm like excellent at it. It's like I wake up and my to-do list feels massive. It's about prioritizing when do I feel like I'm most effective on like financial work, and then when is my creative time, and then like during service for me is almost just like autopilot. It's really about like being present, talking. I'm not the boisterous chef who's out like welcoming guests and like kicking rocks and having all these conversations, and I love it, but it's like I'm still working. That's like not my comfort zone. You know what I mean? My comfort zone is like on the line with a team, cooking, plating, tasting. So yeah, I mean, like I'm still figuring it out. So.
And then how do you approach growth moving forward? You've been so patient thus far. Is that your intention, that like there are no future plans other than to make these excellent? And do you have benchmarks or metrics where you would say, we don't have anything on the roadmap, but when these things hit X, then we could begin to explore those opportunities?
Yeah, I think it's that. I don't think we'll ever be at a point where it's like, okay, now the restaurant is good. Let's go figure out what's next. Because if we're at the point the restaurant's good, we're probably not pushing ourselves enough. So that's like the baseline. I think we're always a little bit uncomfortable, and we're always like never quite there. That also means we're always hungry to then continue to grow and evolve. So I do think there's going to be future projects without knowing what they are. I mean, a farm for sure. This is something that will help our team. It'll help our community. It'll help our cuisine, and certainly will then offer like help to differentiate us from kind of like maybe just differentiate ourselves, tell our own story. Who knows, man? I'd love a hotel, you know, because I think we could go beyond just the food, and like it would be small and it would be curated, but like how do you take just the food and then it comes design and then comes in like the flow and like all those things. I love all that, and the art, and dude, it's just so interesting. I really like building Auburn. Was an incredible 2 years with John and Masha Kleinhampel, who have Klein Agency, who was like our interior design team, and they were also like incredibly good at building 3D models in Rhino. And then when we'd see a chair, they would then have like a woodworker who would go build it. And then we would sit and we'd be like, oh no, the back's like an inch too low. Or like, what about this entrance angle? And what about that? And this material. And so like by doing this over and over, I mean, I've always loved that. If I wasn't a cook, I'd probably be an architect. And so I just geek out on these things. And I also think that's one of the coolest things about this industry. It's not just about cooking. It's all the other things that are really cool. The design aspect, the art aspect, the music aspect, the team building and interpersonal relationships. All those things are incredibly important. So that's, I mean, again, I don't have the keys to success. It's just like the daily push and the never being quite satisfied has been working so far.
I think focus plays a huge role. I think it plays a huge role in all of our careers. I've been most successful when I've been most focused, and least successful when I have been least focused. I love Hillstone. I mean, I love Hillstone in as much as like everybody loves Hillstone. It's not like I dream about it at night. But they're paragons of consistency. You look at Bourdain said, it's a beautiful quote, that consistency is the religion of our industry.
It is.
And I think that's very much the case.
Yeah.
But there's no maniac Mondays and thirsty Thursdays and
No.
wino Wednesdays. When you look at your brands across the board, what you've tried to do is cement like how you fit into people's lives, execute at a really high level, and just not deviate from that.
Sure.
And it served you really well. But that's not to say that like you and Resnick aren't having like a sideline conversation that's like, yo, that new place just opened. They're doing 2-for-1 everything, and they're crushing our business in the short term, right? How do you deal with?
I mean, we might have said that and then said, well, that's probably not something we want to do or go down that path.
For sure.
Meaning like it works for some people. It's about making the decisions that work for the actual establishment. I think our community knows us to be like very quality oriented, that we're going to buy the best product that we can, that we're working on consistency. Like it is, like you said, it's one of the most important things. The Michelin Guide being consistent is one of the most important things, meaning like the starter to the middle course to the ninth course to the Mignardises all have to be stellar. January has to be as good as July, has to be as good as November. When people come to our restaurants, I feel like they have an expectation, and what we've been able to do is hopefully meet that, obviously try and surpass it. But I feel like the vast majority of the people are super happy. And so consistency, very important. It's just a matter of like figuring out what we think works for us and what people will like. I mean, the point of like, we really kind of want to add value to experiences versus discounting experiences. We want to create experiences. The point of like each of these restaurants is as much about like what is the experience of the restaurant as it is like a particular plate or like what is the labor cost for back of the house in this period. It's like, if we can hone in on the experience we're trying to create, it helps like give us a kind of a lens and a paradigm to work through to make it, to like base our decision making on. So it's not like certain things work for certain people. It's just, you got to kind of figure out what you like, what you stand behind, and what works, and like what people are into. But for us, it's really about like the team creating some cool stuff.
And then as you look forward, it's everyone's going to talk about the economy. Every year since I got into this industry, even in booming economies, people have been complaining about the economy. What I found is maybe not in all seasons, but people that make money have a tendency to make money. People that don't have a tendency not to. And part of that is kind of knowing what you own, what you're known for, and being able to execute that with consistency. And another part of that is being able to read the tea leaves. So when you look at the trajectory of the restaurants, what are you most excited about, and what gives you pause?
I mean, I'm most excited just to see where each restaurant goes, like how far we can evolve each restaurant. We try and make sure that each restaurant is the best version of itself. Like Jeune Jolie is not trying to be a 2 Michelin star restaurant, because if we did, we would have to like change the core of it so much to achieve what we believe would maybe get us there, that it would like change what it is and the beauty of it. So like honing in on each one, I'm really excited just to see like, how do we keep doing that? How do we keep the team engaged? How do the chefs and pastry chefs and the team overall, everyone like stay motivated, and like where we can take it. And again, that's digging deeper. At Jeune, we talk about like a lot of just kind of regenerative farming practices and sourcing and being like green initiatives. Each restaurant has its own thing that it's working towards. I think there's not a whole lot that makes me pause, other than just making sure that every day I'm trying to think about like, what were the lessons learned? What are some opportunities for tomorrow? And like, how can we do better tomorrow? So like not being blindsided by just like, or seeing everything through rose colored glasses, not only seeing the positive, being ultra critical of the negative, not dwelling on them, but like what are the things that we can take out, and like simple ways to do that. We read feedback all the time, Yelp reviews, open table reviews, anything that's like not where we want it or is where we want it. It's like, what can we take out of that? And it's like, again, being curious about like, there is validity there. Like someone experienced this. What can we do to be better, to like take this to ourselves? So, I mean, there's always like, uncertainty about the future, but I don't think you can be paralyzed by it. I think you have to embrace it. And again, back to kind of what I was saying a long time ago, is like getting comfortable, being uncomfortable, and getting comfortable, like working through it and knowing that you will make the best decisions you can. I think being nimble, so creating restaurants that are flexible. The team is open to change. The team is like ready for a last minute menu change if needed. Like you have to like be okay with that kind of thing. And so, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question too much, but those are
It
my immediate
does.
thoughts.
And I've got one more for you.
Okay.
Last question is, what should we steal from you? What are the tactics, the tools, the strategies that have served you well, that we could drop into our own lives and businesses and be rewarded with?
Sure. I think staying curious, that's like definitely a theme. Always. I mean, I feel like a lot of us, like a lot of people say it, that everyone's open to learn more and learn more. And I think it's one of the beautiful things about the industry is there's always something to learn and a way to evolve. So staying curious, sorry. Being optimistic. I am a realist, but I'm also an optimist, and I try and like focus on opportunities and growth, but then also kind of nitpick through what things didn't work very well, and then potentially just like don't get overwhelmed by failures, whether that's big or small. And again, it's like just don't get discouraged. You know what I mean? Like it's a matter of just keep pushing through. I think the way to success, the way to try to arrive there, and I certainly don't think we're there yet, and we're working towards it, is just like to keep going and to keep going. It's just like you can't give up. You learn and you grow.